Alrighty guys, hello, here we are at the last episode of the Creating Meals Mastercourse. And we've talked about all the different parts of a meal separately, we've talked about how to combine them in one-pot meals, we've talked about the different courses and the different times you would be making things like feasts, like, picnics, all that kind of stuff. But I think the last thing we gotta talk about is when it is appropriate to be kind of creating these meals at all, who you're making them for, and what to watch out for when it comes to protecting your own energy with it. Like, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you guys. This book, it's a really cool book, and it's got a lot of interesting recipes and things in it, right? Like, this one here is the Feast of Pisces. But have I actually made a single recipe out of this? No. What I use this for instead is to kind of figure out the associations and the potential combinations to go with certain times of the year. And I also consider things like who I'm cooking for, what's going on. So, without further ado, let's talk about some mundane things you gotta consider, and some magical things you gotta consider, and some things you gotta look out for when you are making your meals. By the way, if you want to see these videos 2 weeks earlier, consider subscribing to my Patreon, where you not only get all these videos, but also recipe cards, specific deity profiles, and lots of other interesting things to look at. Video tiers start at $10 a month, so definitely consider checking it out. So first things first, when it comes to mundane considerations, if you are having any kind of people over your house, or even if you're just feeding your family, obviously one of the biggest things you have to consider is allergies. People are coming over, do you know what they're allergic to? Because I don't think if someone's allergic to peanut butter, you're going to be making like a 12-course spread with peanuts, right? We're just not going to do that. The last thing we want is someone going into anaphylactic shock at our party or whatever get-together that we're having. That is not fun. No one wants it. So, allergies, first thing you gotta consider. And the second thing you gotta consider is what people like. I've absolutely had moments where I worked really hard on a meal just to find out that my guest did not like something like mushrooms, or, I don't know, didn't like something like peas or something, and so then they just kind of like didn't really eat the meal. So, to make sure that doesn't happen, it's definitely good to check in, especially if you're cooking for someone for the first time, on what kind of foods they actually like, right? Allergies and food likes and dislikes. If you're creating a meal, these are the biggest things. You're not going to serve your family something that they're just not going to eat, because that's how you waste food. And the third mundane thing is just considering what the occasion is for. If it's just, your average dinner night with your family, there's absolutely no need to go all out. Pot of spaghetti works just fine. But if it's something like a party, a birthday party, maybe a Christmas party, now we're getting specific. What kind of foods usually go at a birthday party? Well, it depends on what time of year it is, right? Again, if you got that, Pisces child, Feast of Pisces in here can show you a little bit about what direction you can take that meal. And if it's something like a Christmas party, now it's time to bust out the family traditions and find the magic in the food of those traditions. For example, my family is Slovenian, my boyfriend's family is Ukrainian. There's a lot of things like borscht and pierogies and patitsa and all these other things. So finding the magic in walnuts, which go in patitsa, or in beets, which go in borscht, that's important, right? Doing that can take meals you've eaten every year all your life and make them into something really magical and interesting. Now, speaking of being magical and interesting, let's talk about the magical things you gotta consider. So again, right, we've already talked a little bit about, the time of year, things you gotta consider, right? Like, for instance, here with the Feast of Scorpio, we have a suggestion for pork loin with pickled mustard seeds, blood orange sorbet with Fernet Branca. That's a lot. That's a very intense spread, but think about what's going on in there, right? So we have a little thing for Pluto and for Scorpio right there. In which case, okay, you want pungent aromatic dishes, you want rich sauces, red meats and shellfish, things like black beans, smoked meats, grapefruit, beer and hops, blackberries. Need I say more? If you are in Scorpio season for whatever party you're hosting, harness that Scorpio energy through these kinds of combinations. Of course, you gotta consider things like what season it is, if it's like around the spring equinox, some more spring flavors. If it's around winter time, those are those more heavy flavors, right? Like, you're not gonna make a really thick, hearty, hot soup in the hot days of summer, right? We're gonna save that for winter when we're all cold and we're all eating heavy stuff. In the summer and the spring, when everything is growing and we got that fresh produce, that's when it's time to bust out the salads, bust out the, all these different kinds of fruits and vegetables and good stuff like that. I mean, hell, even just a really nice strawberry salad, delicious. Fruit on a salad, I know some people don't like it, but fruit on a salad is really good. And with June's moon, right, our full moon, the strawberry moon, if you guys ever wanted to plan something simple for the strawberry moon, a strawberry salad is really good. Throw some strawberries, fresh basil, fresh mint, onion, walnuts, cranberries, all on a salad together. Yes, so that's the time of year. But you can also narrow it down even further and consider what day that your meal is being cooked on. For instance, if you need to banish something up out of your house, make something like goulash or chicken paprikash on a Saturday. Saturdays are the days of banishing, binding, exorcising, and if you have a meal that is full of onions, which are all about exorcism and protection, you're good. You're good. Likewise, Sundays are days for wealth and money. So if you've got something with a lot of basil in it, or a lot of other kind of like dill or other herbs that attract wealth, if you have something to do on like a Friday, right, and you want to do like a little love spell because you have a date going on, get all those flavors like cherry, like apple, peach, apricot, make a nice sweet thing for after dinner. You can make something like coq au vin, which uses wine in it and things like that, and uses carrots, which are also really good for that. These are things you can consider that just add to the magic. And if you think we're done with just the, time of year and the time of the week, no. You can also consider your moon phases. If you really want everything to just align perfectly for your meal, not only are you going to banish something on a Saturday with your chicken paprikash, you're going to banish it on a Saturday during the waning moon. Waning moon means you're decreasing things out of your life, which is a perfect time to do any kind of binding. Meanwhile, while the moon is waxing, perfect time to do any kind of wealth attraction spell. So when you're putting your meals together, it's not just about pairing broccoli with chicken, right? It's also about pairing those magical associations with the time of the year, with the occasion, with the people that you're serving it to, with the time of the week and the moon phase and everything else. I know you're probably thinking how do witches keep all this straight in their head? And the truth is, not often. And I will give you this caveat here. If you don't have all of these elements lined up perfectly, if you're doing a banishment on a Saturday, but it's not a waxing or it's not a waning moon, it doesn't mean the spell's not going to work. It just means that it could work a smidge better if you lined it up with that moon phase. But if you really need to get rid of something like today, you don't even need to wait for Saturday. You certainly don't need to wait for a waning moon. You could just do it anytime, anywhere. It's just that if you have the time to wait, and you really want it to be like a wrecking ball versus a boxing glove, wait for those days. And lastly, you want to consider what foods are even in season, right? So we talked about the time of year and the fresh fruits and things like that. When the foods are in season, specifically when you can grow them yourself or get them from a farm, those are going to be a little bit perkier magically than ones that you might have gotten from the store that are out of season and that look all kind of old and sad because they've been transported halfway around the world, right? By then the fruit's kind of a little meh, lost some flavors, lost some pizzazz. So if you can get fresh stuff, if someone has a garden or you garden yourself, fresh foods, they go a long way. And foods that you've actively pickled yourself too goes a long way. So really it's not just about the time of year, it's about your effort level. And I've talked a little bit about this before on TikTok, but foods that you grow yourself, it's not anymore just a vegetable or an herb or a fruit, right? Now it's actively a part of a little spirit that you've helped take care of. And when you take care of those plants and they produce food for you, it just gets a little bit stronger magically than if you go to the store. There's nothing wrong with using store-bought stuff for your magic. That's totally fine. I do it all the time. But when you grow it yourself, it just has that little extra connection to you and is a little bit more tailored to your energy now. You know what I'm saying? But now the last thing we gotta talk about when it comes to making meals is things you have to watch out for, things you have to be aware of just on a practical level and just on any other level, right? And the first thing is that if you are having some kind of holiday gathering, and it's a popular holiday, say it's like for us Americans, say it's a Memorial Day cookout, don't wait until the last minute to get your food. It's gonna be a nightmare, you're not gonna like it, and let me tell you something, your mood makes a big deal in how the food comes out and how the magic works. So if you stress yourself out that morning shopping for everything, and then like barely have any time to cook it all, you're not gonna have a good time. And the magic's gonna have a little bit of that energy of fritziness that people are gonna be able to tell. They're gonna be able to tell because they're gonna look at you, they're gonna be able to tell because it's in the food. So try to chill out and plan ahead a little bit, alright? And speaking of your energy, protect your energy. If you know that the people that you're cooking for don't like or need extravagant feasts, don't waste the energy to do that. If you know that they're happy with just like some burgers, just make some burgers. You don't have to make like a 5-course meal and go totally ballistic. Just give them what they want, because otherwise they're going to be overwhelmed just as much as you are. Let me tell you something, you might be overwhelmed in the kitchen, but they're going to be overwhelmed at the table. So keep in mind who you're cooking for, because you wouldn't give, you know, your mom like a ridiculous 12-course, like out of proportion meal. Or maybe you would. I don't know. Maybe your mom does like that kind of stuff. I know my mom would probably eat maybe 1 course, maybe 2, the main course, and then would just be like, okay, bye, that's done. And lastly, if you are having a big party or something, you might want to be prepared for leftovers. Whatever you're cooking, if you're cooking a lot of it for a lot of people, yeah, maybe everyone will clear it out, but maybe also you'll have some leftovers of things, like maybe the pasta salad will be a little bit left over. Maybe you'll have a lot of materials like tomatoes and lettuce left over. Maybe you'll have, I don't know, a bunch of cake left over. You gotta figure out what to do with it beforehand. Figure out, pinpoint in your party or your feast, who the hell is taking what home if you don't want it sitting in your fridge. Because for some reason, there are people out there who don't like leftovers. That blows my mind. Leftovers are like my entire life. But if you don't like leftovers, you either want to cook enough that you won't have any, or you want to make sure that you can spot people who can take stuff home. If you do like leftovers and you happen to make a lot of food, then congratulations. I mean, one time I had a party and I made an entire like casserole beforehand. Like I made this entire thing to just bake when people got there, and then we had so much other food that we didn't even need it. Like we didn't even need it. So honestly, that was great though, because it wasn't cooked yet, so it didn't even really count as leftovers. So the next day I just popped the whole thing in the oven. No mess, no nothing. And it was awesome. All that work of the party, we all ate and we all had a great time. And then the next day I had dinner already set up on accident because I overdid it the day of the party. But sometimes it works out like that. Sometimes it works out and you spend a lot of energy for nothing, because then people don't eat it, or you don't have anything to do with it, and then it gets thrown out. Avoid throwing out food at all costs, please. But at the end of the day, you are well equipped with what you need to do in order to put a solid meal together, whether it's just for the family on the average weeknight, whether it's at a party, whether it's for a holiday. You know what to do. You absolutely know what to do. And when you combine all of these pieces together, trust me when I say that you will have a magical experience every single time. So, with that, I hope you guys have a great time making all kinds of meals, especially as we come into this summer season of celebration and parties and cookouts and stuff. And I wish you guys happy cooking in the kitchen. See ya!